Um, so we're talking about oils today. And at the beginning of every class, I want to kind of start off with reviewing just the Fitmania basic healthy eating principles. So who can tell me one of the basic Fitmania principles? If it comes from the ground, right, or has a mother, it's okay to eat, not people, right? But not everything that comes from the ground and has a mother you can eat. But no, try to eat things that are close to their whole and natural form as possible. And that's going to be especially true with oils today, and we'll talk about why in a second. Who can tell me another Fitmania basic eating principle? Just want to make sure we review these every possible opportunity. So we're eating real food. We're eating 6 times a day. How come? Right. Keep your metabolism going, making sure you don't get so hungry that you binge, that kind of thing. Yeah, great. And there's one more. What's the last one that we need to do for healthy eating? Dad? No sugar? Yeah, I guess that's. I kind of include that in the eating real food since sugar is made in a lab. The last one I was thinking of is balancing every meal. So you have some carbohydrates, some protein, and a little bit of healthy fat. And that I've had a lot of questions since the challenge began and since we started doing these classes about what constitutes a healthy fat and how do you tell if a healthy fat is healthy, right? Because you can get oil that looks like this that's healthy and oil that looks like this that's not healthy, right? So that's what we're going to talk about today. A lot of those things are controversial too, right? You go back 20 years, butter was really controversial. They said, don't eat butter, eat margarine. Now we know that our bodies don't recognize margarine as a food. It recognizes it as a toxin with calories, right? So it's toxic to us and makes us gain weight. The same thing with Crisco, right? We replaced, for all intents and purposes, in our cooking as a society, we replaced lard from animals with Crisco, which was from vegetables. So we thought, well, Crisco's from vegetables, so this is going to be much better, right? And it's been a disaster. It's the same thing as margarine. It's toxic with calories. It's a toxin with calories. So those are 2 things, obviously, we want to avoid at all costs: margarine, Crisco. The other thing we want to avoid are most of the vegetable oils on the shelf in the grocery stores: canola oil, corn oil, soy oil. Those kinds of vegetable oils typically are chemically pressed. So they're made in a lab, which is obviously not coming from the ground. It's not a natural whole food. It also throws off our balances of omega-6 and omega-3s. And they're not very high in nutrient value. Where these other oils that we're going to be talking about today are high in nutrients. They're also, most of them, fairly balanced to keep our omega-3s, omega-6s even, keep our heart healthy. So they're good. One rule of thumb, I think, to tell if something is going to be a healthy oil or an unhealthy oil is to think of where it comes from. So avocado oil, we're going to talk about avocado oil in a little bit. I can imagine squeezing an avocado and getting oil out, right? It's oily. Or peanut oil. I can imagine squeezing a peanut and getting oil out. You grind up a peanut, you let it sit, oil just rises to the surface. There's your oil. If you can't imagine grinding that thing up and getting oil out of it, it probably is not a healthy oil to use, right? So like corn oil. If you grind up corn and let it sit, the oil does not rise to the surface. You have to go to a lab for that. We had a lot of questions last time about grapeseed oil, and in our other classes on oils, we have used grapeseed oil and recommended it. And if I've recommended it to you, I'm sorry, but there's been some new studies on that that have said it's not a great thing. It's low in nutrient value, it's chemically pressed, and if you squeeze a grape, and as I think about it, it makes sense, right? If you squeeze a grape seed, it's not going to be oily. You're not going to get oil out of it unless you go to a lab. So what we're going to use on the oils that we're going to talk about today are all things that have been used for centuries going back, if you go back 100, 150 years ago, before there were labs to make food, what were people traditionally using in their kitchens? What were the traditional foods from all around the world, which we're so lucky to have access to the ingredients and the knowledge, the recipes from cultures all over the world. But what were people using in their kitchens 100 years ago before they had access to lab-created food? Culinarily speaking, oil kind of does the same thing. It goes across your tongue and carries the flavors of whatever else you're eating, intensifies those, and allows you to taste things better, right? That's why everything tastes better with butter on it, right? That's why everything tastes better, if you like bacon, everything tastes better with bacon on it, right? It's the fat. It's not that it has a lot of flavor in and of itself, but it carries the flavor of whatever else you're eating. And so when we're eating, our bodies don't say, stop eating when you've hit your maximum calories, right? If they did, we would stop eating after like 3 Oreos. But we don't. We eat the whole Oreos. Our body eats for fiber, for protein, for macronutrients, nutrition, but it also eats for flavor. So if you're eating something that is highly flavorful, maybe it's spicy, it's got a little fat in it, so that your brain is receiving those flavors, you're going to want to stop eating sooner, even though you like the food better, right? So if you have a really rich and flavorful thing that has every taste in it, you've got some umami and some sour and some sweet and some bitter. If you have all those flavors, you've got a little bit of oil, your body's going to stop eating. It's going to be more satisfied sooner because it has those things. So flavor is a really essential part of the way we eat, right? And you can tell by looking at what people have been eating for hundreds of years. We eat things that taste good. Now, sometimes when we have gotten used to eating like hydrogenated oils and sugar and salt, and that's essentially the only flavors that we're getting, our body gets kind of maladjusted, and we need to kind of reset and relearn about what flavors our bodies really like and human people really like. And that's going to vary a little bit from person to person, but oil is going to be a great start for that. So let's talk about oils. Dad, would you mind serving up the eggs? He's going to bring over just some hard-boiled eggs with some guacamole on them. So here these eggs are coming around. The first form of oil that we use in our diet when you're balancing out your meal and you need a little bit of healthy oil, it's just the oil that's naturally in foods, right? All animal protein, all animal foods are going to have naturally a little bit of fat in them. If you're drinking milk, if you're a milk drinker, don't drink skim milk, right? Because you need that little bit of fat to get the nutrients, the vitamin D and everything into your cells. So this that's coming around, you've got a little bit of fat in the egg yolk. And we want to emphasize to eat your egg yolks, right? That's where the nutrition is in the yolk. So don't think because you have 3 egg white omelets that you're doing something good for your health, right? You want to eat those yolks. So also avocado naturally has the oil in it. Another way to get some natural oil is if you are using meat, like if you're maybe use some chicken thighs instead of chicken breasts every once in a while. When you do that, you'll just need to cut down significantly on your cooking oil, the oil that you're cooking with. You can still use a little, but use less when you're using very fatty, if you're using meats or things that have a lot of fat in them. Another thing, if you're using bacon, there's nothing wrong with that, but remember that it is an ingredient, a small ingredient, and not a main course. And when you buy it, you're going to look for bacon that's nitrite and nitrate free. So all natural bacon. Almost every store in Boise has some if you look hard. So are you not finding it? Where do you shop? Fred Meyer's. In the Fred Meyer's deli section with the bacon, there's one little section in the corner, and it's a green label, and it should say all natural or something on it. I can't remember what company makes it, but there's usually like 4 or 5 of them with all the rest of the bacon, and it's It has a green label on, so look for that. All right, so that's our first one. The second way to use oil is just adding a little bit of cold, oil for sauces and dressings. So let's do, you can't sit down really. Sorry, nice try. So the next one we're gonna pass out here is just some broccoli with some peppers. And this has a homemade vinaigrette on it. One of the problems that we're finding most of you guys are on the challenge, right? Doing the challenge. Are you having a hard time finding condiments that fit the eating requirements? Most condiments that you're finding in the store are gonna have a lot of sugar in them. They're gonna have a lot of stabilizing chemicals to keep them evenly emulsified on the shelf stable. And they're gonna have just other kinds of gunk. The oils are gonna have soybean oils in them and things like that you're not gonna want. Making them yourself is a really, really simple and easy option. So that recipe for this basic vinaigrette is in here. It's on page 11. And this is the classic, traditional French version of a vinaigrette, but you can change it up however you want, right? You can use any kind of seasonings, any kind of flavorings, but there's basically 3 steps to making any kind of dressing. And we're gonna try something different here in a minute, a different one. That's the same basic idea, but with totally different flavor. What you need is an acid. So this particular one, I used red wine vinegar, and you're gonna need an oil. We used walnut oil. And you're gonna use a 1 part acid to 2 part oil ratio. So if you're using lemon juice and olive oil, balsamic and avocado oil, whatever you're using to make your the base of the main body of your dressing, just try to keep that rough ratio. 1 part acid, 2 parts oil. The other very important step in making any dressing is your flavor base. So this particular flavor base, you use shallots and mustard. Mustard is typically a fairly clean condiment that you can get at the store. Check your ingredients. Some of them might add some sugar or some other things, but typically it's vinegar. They're pretty clean. So a little bit of mustard, a little bit of shallot, and some salt and pepper is the flavor base for this one. But the flavor base could be anything. We're gonna do the meat next. Some traditional flavor combinations. All of my recipes in these books, I've intentionally made them so that you can change them up. You can follow them along if you want to exactly. Sometimes there's typos, so be generous in your reading. But you can follow them along exactly, but you can change just about anything you want. You don't have an ingredient, you can grab something yourself. If you would like, prefer something else in any recipe, you can mix it up. And I put in here on page 3 a couple of lists of things that go well together. So you could take this Italian list of flavors here on page 3, and you can mix any combination or everything on the list, and it'll be okay. Nothing's gonna clash. So if you wanna play around in your kitchen, and you say, I'm gonna try Indian food, you can take anything or everything on the Indian food list, put it together, it's gonna taste fine. Nothing's gonna clash. So I would highly recommend that with that 1 part acid, 2 part oil, and a flavor base recipe, template, play around. Make your own recipes. This next one that he's passing out, this is just a beef and rice with a chimichurri sauce. Chimichurri sauce is a really common sauce in Central and South America. You can find it in like little baggies in Mexico, or Chad says in Argentina, they have big bowls of it at every restaurant, so you can just dump it on your food. And it's just made in a blender. You just toss everything in, blend it up. The recipe is right underneath, is on page 11, I think. 11, right underneath the vinaigrette recipe. It's the chimichurri sauce. And it's a totally different thing, right? So you have the French vinaigrette, which is fairly light. This is what it looks like. Just a light kind of pink thing. You get the chimichurri sauce, which is a sharper flavor. It's bright green. It's strong. So you can do, but it's essentially the same basic thing, just with different ingredients, but the same basic template. So I'd encourage you to play around with that. Play around with the different sauces and things. Also, just for your information, the rice here that we used was this from Costco. So if anybody hasn't tried this, it's really good. It's really, really easy. Pre-cooked, you just open it up, heat it up in the microwave or in a pan, and it's brown rice and quinoa. And I wanted to bring that up for your attention just because it's so, so easy. And you never know when Costco's going to have it and when it's not going to have it, and it has it right now. So if you go to Costco in the next week, stock up. Okay, the next thing we're going to do, I need a volunteer. Who wants to volunteer? I think I need a taller volunteer. All right, Anne, do you mind? I'm sorry, buddy. I don't think they'll be able to see you.
So I don't have to stand on my head.
Nope. Okay, we're going to come back over here. We've had a lot of questions about mayonnaise, and mayonnaise has been hard to find that doesn't have soy oil in it. You can find healthy mayonnaise at like Natural Grocers or Whole Foods, Co-op, that kind of place. But it's so, so easy to make. So we're going to make it right here. In the blender, there's 1 egg. There's about 2 tablespoons of orange juice. In the recipe, I use white wine vinegar. And in the samples that you're going to be having, you're going to have white wine vinegar also. I just didn't bring the white wine vinegar. I was out of it. So we used a different acid. And then there's a little bit of mustard powder and some salt and pepper. So what Anne's going to do is push the grate button. Yeah, that's right. That's good. Push the grate. I know. There we go. Now she's going to really, really slowly pour the oil. Walnut oil we use, but you can use any kind of oil you want. Just really as slow as you can. Just kind of a nice, steady, little slow stream. It takes a little bit, so we'll just look at Anne while she does it and appreciate her willingness. So here she goes. Just keep pouring it in about halfway through the oil. That's right. You're good. Just keep it coming. Just keep it going. About halfway through, it's going to start to thicken up. You want to use a lightly flavored oil. So if you want it to be like an olive oil taste, you might only want to use maybe a half olive oil and half something else because it's a really strong flavor. Okay, that's good. You turn it off.
Turn it off.
Yep. And that's it. That's mayonnaise. So that's the next thing. He's going to bring it out to you. And that recipe is in your book. And you can just put a lid on it, put it in the fridge, and keep it.
I was going to ask that. How long does it keep?
You can just keep it until you use it like regular mayonnaise. 3 weeks. It's got the acid in it, and you're okay. So here, those are coming.
You can double or triple this.
You know what? I wouldn't unless you're using a lot of mayonnaise, just because it makes it a little bit harder to emulsify. Double it for sure. Double for sure. Triple, you might be getting. Yeah. It actually makes quite a bit, surprisingly, for the ingredients. Oh, it seems to go further than I'm expecting. So he's passing this around. The other benefit of homemade mayonnaise is that it tastes so much better. It's so much better than regular mayonnaise. So this mayonnaise that you're tasting right now is the exact recipe that's in your book. And this is served with a sweet potato fry recipe, which is also in your book. So, any questions about homemade mayonnaise, making mayonnaise? Okay. The next thing we're going to talk about is cooking. I think I've got all my raw, yeah. We're going to be talking about cooking with oil. Every oil that you use is going to have a different smoke point. Some things have really high smoke points, like avocado oil has a really high smoke point. Peanut oil has a high smoke point. Some things have low smoke points, like olive oil, butter, and you have a chart in your book on page 4 that shows kind of what temperatures you can use which oils with. And when we're talking about that, we're talking about on the stove top. You can use most oils for whatever you're baking in the oven. Like you can toss stuff in olive oil and bake it in the oven at high temperatures, because food in the oven never actually reaches the temperature of the oven. Does that make sense? So it only gets to be maybe half the temperature of, if you set it for 400, the actual food doesn't get to be 400 degrees. So you can use whatever oil that you want in the oven. But if you're using the pan, and oil is typically the first thing for whatever you're cooking. If you're using a stove, almost always you're going to put a little bit of oil in the pan. That's the first thing you're going to do, with very, very few exceptions. So we're going to do a stir fry here. Stir fry, can you guys see him around me? So a stir fry is pretty familiar, right? Most people do it. It's really similar to like a French saute. Stir fry is high heat. So you're going to need an oil that holds up to high heat. Peanut oil is a very traditional Asian, base for stir fry. We're going to use ghee today. Yep, put it in. Mm-hmm. So he's going to put the ghee in and wait for that to melt. When you're looking for a stir fry pan, you want to get as big of a pan as you can fit on your stovetop. You're going to want it to be fairly deep, flat bottomed, with sloping sides. Don't think, I'm going to do a lot of stir fries, so I'm going to go buy a wok. Woks in the store are not very well suited for stovetops. So if you have that urge to go buy a wok, just don't. Just resist. Unless it's an electric wok, and then, we can talk. What you're looking for is the most possible surface area, right? So while we're waiting for that to heat up, it will only take a second or two. But while we're waiting for that to heat up, we'll talk about the next thing you're going to do is you're going to add bits of food, vegetables, meats, proteins, whatever you want. But what you want it to be, high heat is, yep. You want it to be in bite-sized pieces, and you want it to be dry. If your food is wet, so you see this, we're going to cook some shrimp here. I patted it down, I rinsed it and patted it down with a paper towel. Because if your food is wet, the oil is not going to adhere to the food, right? Oil and water don't mix. So if you're doing chicken or whatever, pat it down with a paper towel so that it'll have good contact with the oil and it'll brown and the flavors will get in there. I like to salt and pepper my protein before it goes into the pan. So we've put some salt and pepper on that shrimp. And as soon as the oil is melted, so when the oil's ready, it's going to start to kind of shimmer, have a shimmery look. Does it have a little bit of a shimmery look? Actually, it does. It does. It's starting to kind of shimmer. You can see a little bit of smoke rising up. He's going to just toss that in, about half in each pan. Sorry. And we're doing half in each pan because the worst thing you can do in a stir fry is to crowd your pan. You want to have a little bit of space. And if you're cooking for a lot, if you're making a lot, like I always cook for 7 people, so I just do it in batches. So then you're going to toss it in, and then you're going to toss it around as fast as, keep it moving. And what makes a stir fry is that you've tossed it around, it's cooked in that oil, and then you finish it with just a little bit of liquid. So there's some sauce. There's a sauce in here that you can make. I think it's called orange sauce. But you don't have to be that complicated. Your liquid could be a little bit of soy sauce. It could be a little bit of broth. It could be some orange juice. What we're going to use today, serve them around one more time, Dad, I think. What we're going to use today in this one is just a tiny bit of soy sauce with a drop of toasted sesame oil. And I wanted to bring this to your attention. It's delicious, but it is not a cooking oil. There's a sesame seed oil that you can cook with, which is a great healthy oil that's light in color, and it's fairly neutral flavored. You can stir fry with it. You can do what you want with it. But don't accidentally get this. This is a flavoring oil, and it's very, very strong. You would never want to use more than a couple of drops in any dish because it just adds a lot of flavor. They've toasted the sesame seeds first. There's a little bit of this in the soy sauce. And just keep those moving. Okay, so Dad, you can probably dump the soy sauce in each one now. There's that. Give it a good stir. Like vigorously. There you go. He does like 6 workouts a day. He should be fine on this. And then, Dad, if you could squeeze 1/2 of an orange over each pan. Good. See how those workouts have been paying off. Okay, that's good. That's like 6 times more juice than I get out of it when I squeeze it. Yeah, it's because he does boot camp. It's amazing. Okay, then you take them off the heat, Dad. They should be good. So, and that's it. That's a stir fry. And it shouldn't take much longer than that. You want to double the time if you're doing a chicken or beef, depending on how big of your pieces are. But that's just as easy as it is. So we're going to serve that up here in a second. Before you guys got here, I stir fried some bok choy, which is one of my favorite vegetables to stir fry. It stir fries up nice. Like, so you just chop this end off. If you're not familiar with bok choy, you chop this end off and just slice it. This is like a Chinese cabbage. And I like it because it has a little bit of crispiness, like a celery or something, but it also has the leafy greens, so you're getting your B vitamins and the energy that comes from those. So that would also be a similar thing. You'd want to do a similar thing if you were searing meat, is to heat up that oil, put it on until it's brown, and flip it. So I'm going to do the similar thing. Oh, we're almost. So while he's getting that ready, we're going to talk about the last thing, which is treats, right? We can't finish a class without the treats. And if you've been to my classes before, you know I like to play a game called What Can I Cover with Chocolate? And it really is a broad topic. We could go on and on and on for days. But today we're going to have chocolate-covered walnuts. The recipe is in your book, but I did add in this one some cinnamon. So I just added a couple of shakes of cinnamon before I put the chocolate in. If you're cooking with chocolate, so this is a question that I've been getting a lot. Some of you are going to be old hat at this and you're going to know it, but I've been getting this question a lot, so we're going to talk about it. Melting chocolate, there's 2 ways that I do it. You can do it in a double boiler or a metal bowl over a pan. I don't like that way. I think it's messy and it's a pain. I use the microwave. I get a big, heavy glass bowl. I put my chocolate chips. I use chocolate chips and then part chocolate chips and part dark quality eating chocolate. So like green and black's 85%. So I do half and half of each. And put it in the microwave for a minute, stir it up, put it in for another 30 seconds, stir it up, and just keep doing that until it's melted, 30 seconds at a time. Stir it. I think that's the cleanest, easiest way to melt chocolate without burning it. And make sure if you're new to melting chocolate that nothing that touches the chocolate is moist or wet at all. It'll ruin it. So don't put a wet spoon in there, or make sure your dish is clean, and don't put any water at all with the chocolate. And then you just toss the walnuts. You're going to toast them in an oven, or not an oven, you can do it in an oven, but we're going to do it in a skillet on dry heat because the walnuts have fat in them, right? So we're not going to add fat to the skillet. We're just going to toss those walnuts on over like medium, low heat until they start to smell like popcorn. When they start to smell like popcorn, you pull them off, sprinkle them with salt, sprinkle them with cinnamon, and then stir them into that melted chocolate. So, and that's the next thing we're going to have. All right, does anybody have any questions or comments or recipes that they want to have made over before we eat? Okay, let's do our giveaway. Did everybody get a ticket? Okay, looks like it. Do you want to draw one out for me, buddy? Yeah. They're all Troy. Yay! All right, Troy. You get some avocado oil and some olive oil. So there you go. All right, thank you so much. He's going to pass out the shrimp, and then I'll come around with the chocolate. You know, I actually made enough of this chocolate on Thursday night's class for Thursday night and this class, but I didn't put it away. And so by the time everybody cleared out, it was gone. So, sure.
Yeah, I had one piece of dirt.
So make sure, well, with any stir fry, you're going to want to make sure that you have all your stuff ready, because once the heat is on, it's just going to fly. So did you want some chocolate? Okay. Here you go, guys. Chocolate. You're welcome. What was that? Sure. All right, you guys are welcome to stay around and chat, but we will see you again in 2 weeks from now. We're going to talk about vegetables. So have a good day, good Saturday. You're welcome.